Okay, let's try this again. Okay, I'm back. Yay. I don't know what happened. It's weird. Um, okay, so what were we talking about? Uh what were we talking about? Just self-love and self-confidence. I don't know, man. Like I think if you had asked me this question like 2 hours earlier, my answer would have been different. This whole perfectionism realization has made me really question things. So I feel like I do have a pretty much healthier understanding of self love and practice of self love. Um, so I don't know. Like, I don't know if we ever like really get, if there's like an end point. You know what I mean? Like, you just kind of keep having these different realizations and you do different kind of work on yourself and you apply and you adjust and then you apply and you just kind of keep moving forward with all of this. Uh, who I am today with my level of self love today is very different than who I was 3 years ago. So my standards are much higher as far as what kinds of situations I will keep myself in. That's probably been the big thing that's changed. And then probably more, even more recently, has been with self care, like fully, truly embracing that. This was a conversation Healthy Love and I had the other day where we were talking about, the old us, like self care would have been just kind of the basics, like food, clothing, shelter. And now it's more like, okay, really taking time out to just take care of our body and um, to try to get movement in, to do things I enjoy, to spend time with quality people, like doing things that really nourish you on every level. Right? CFIN says, I noticed that when I have these aha moments, it really throws me into a loop where I don't want to do other things until I integrate it. Yeah, I feel the exact same way. Like I I'm still kind of just shell shocked by this realization. And so my worldview right now is just really kind of spinning. It's weird. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see kind of where things are tomorrow. Yeah, Daniel says I stopped being a doormat to anyone and now I stand up for myself. Yeah, that's huge. I think that's all about self-love is like setting boundaries and having healthy standards and having deal breakers. Um, I mean, my goodness, the stuff that I used to deal with uh, 5 years ago, the new me wouldn't even humor that at all. Kiara says, Dana, I have these horrible, intrusive thoughts, most of them replaying my abuse and what I should have said or done differently. I get consumed in them, and oftentimes I struggle to function. Any tips? Well, I think at that point, we have to just move into self compassion and just realize, like you did the best you could at the time. And to keep reminding yourself of that, like you handled the situation the best way you could with the information and the skills that you had. And regardless of whatever skills or knowledge you would have had, there would have been, it just, abusers abuse. Like it's just what they do. And had you even said or done certain things outside of leaving, saying or doing things differently would have only, they would have only switched up their tactics with how they became abusive. It wouldn't have stopped the abuse. So I think just realizing like you did the best you could. Had you known different, you would have done different. You would have probably left, or you would have never gotten tangled up with this person in the first place. But you didn't know what was going on. There's a lot of manipulation involved and all kinds of factors at play. You did the best you could. And so when that voice kicks up, I would just say it to that voice. Like, you know what? You did the best you could. You've been through a lot. I think now, like, I need you be kind to yourself, and just telling yourself these affirmations of like, you did the best you could. It's time for you to be kind to yourself right now. Had you known different, you would have done different. These kinds of things. Mo says, the loneliness is tough for me as I'm trying to make new friends, healthy friends that are not narcissists. Yes. And, like I said, I'm a big fan of meetup.com. I think it can be a really great way to meet people in a relatively safe way. It's generally in groups. It's generally around similar things that you like to do. It's not dating, and the meetups are really low cost, and people are there looking to meet new people. Like, that's what it's all about. And it's a great, relatively safe way to practice a lot of these skills that we talk about, like to practice kind of paying attention to how you feel around certain people, and to setting boundaries, and to participating in conversations, and listening to like what other people say, and like just kind of getting your sea legs back with interacting with new people again. It's just I'm a big fan of practicing in groups like that. Right? Rob says, I've had a small epiphany this week on perfectionism and self-compassion. It really silences the critical voice, simply being the supportive person to yourself. Yeah, that makes total sense to me. One of the things when I had this realization about this perfectionism and fear of fear of making mistakes, was I kept telling myself, like, my default mantra has been for a while now, like, you can handle this. Like, it's Dana, it's okay. Like, so what? You make mistakes. Like, totally fine. Like, the logical side of me knows this, but it's, I think there's just a lot of like residual stuff there that I kind of need to sort through. But yeah, realizing like I can handle this. Like I know people that can help with this. Like I know I have a support system. Like I can ask for help. There's a lot of different ways that I can handle this. I can handle this. And just putting a face to that monster is incredibly helpful. Sam says, yeah, Dana, these affirmations have really done a lot for me in these past months. Beth is saying, yeah, it's an inner child thing. Yeah, like I said, I had a lot of realizations just in the past hour, and I would agree. I tell you, the more like going down this rabbit hole of just understanding all of this, the boundary standards, deal breakers, being assertive, like all of this, that you just keep pulling on the string, and the string just keeps coming, it's just really, really wild. So stuff that I never thought was an issue. Although I will say, I always thought it was weird that it wasn't an issue, because my father is a perfectionist. And when my brother and I were growing up, it's weird too, because my brother and I are so alike. It's uncanny. And he lives in another state, but we are continually going through like the same type of stuff in life. It's just weird. Same type of issues, like same type of challenges, just a lot of the same interests. It's just very strange. And I always thought that was really weird, that my father's level of perfectionism like never really seemed to impact us. But now I'm starting to realize, like, actually, I think it really has. in ways that I am just now starting to see. And not to blame him, not to, um, shirk any responsibility for it, but it was just more of like a realization of, yeah, I can totally see where that's coming from. And that's okay, because now I can really work towards like just disabling that voice and those feelings and realize like this is not my own. That's a good way to put it. Salon says, yes, face to the monster. Anxiety is spiky and dark orange for me. Depression is a deep blue and glompy. Yes. Oh, good for you, Jennifer. Jennifer says, tonight I made myself a baked potato with chives, green beans, and a steak, and a glass of red wine. Yay for self-love. That is fantastic. Oh, well, thank you, Chris, for the live stream donation. And Chris says, thank you for all your help, Dana. Your channel was there for me during the worst year of my life. I can't express to you how much I appreciate you and your channel. That's awesome. I am so glad that I'm able to do this. So I appreciate that you appreciate it. And I'm hoping that the worst year of your life, that you're on to the next chapter. And it's onward and upward from here. So. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Sorry, lots of chat stuff going on in here. Cynthia says, I think you're working on a deeper level of change. Yeah, it's amazing. It's just peeling back layers, isn't it? It's amazing, all of the stuff that us people, all the stuff that gets piled on, my goodness. Rebecca, I think you had asked in the other chat earlier about, and maybe I'm wrong, but were you asking about your mother, your parents, that your father, you're pretty sure is abusive and is a psychopath, and that you were wanting to send your mom some videos or to talk to her about it? She said, would that be like pushing her to leave him? I don't think she'd ever do that. I mean, you could always send a video about a certain topic, because it's really not even, I mean, the label is helpful for a lot of people, but at the same time, it's more of like just that validation that what she's experiencing is not within the realm of like normal relationship problems, like abuse, the ongoing, like the deception, the deceit, the dominance, like that kind of stuff is not normal relationship problem kind of stuff. If you can find maybe a video that speaks to something that she experiences, like projection maybe is probably going on, or gaslighting, like odds are that'll pique her curiosity. You could do that and then just walk away. But then realize too, like she's going to have to get to that own place where she's going to have to decide like what she wants to do. But yeah, sometimes just that another person just saying, hey, this is a problem, and like here's something that can help kind of make sense of it. And maybe even acknowledging, like, I don't want you to feel that I'm pushing you to do anything. I don't want to intrude in your marriage. I don't want to stir the pot too much. I just came across this and I thought of you, and then just leave it. Yeah, Rebecca says, the problem is my mom is just such a strong people pleaser that she just wants to accept all his abuse because that is who he is. Yeah, and I had a friend whose parents were in a very similar marriage, and it was heartbreaking. Her father had a horrific childhood. It was so not okay. And it breaks my heart that no other adults around him like reached out to save him. He basically grew up literally dirt poor, and there were no adults around. Like he was made to really be in charge of his other siblings, and he was like 8 years old. I mean, the whole thing was just wildly not okay. Anyways, her father is a rager, and he's yelled, he's done stuff. The level of the lack of boundaries on his end is just jaw dropping. Like he bought their son a puppy one day when they were out, like didn't ask, just bought him a dog. He's yelled so much that he's passed out before. And his behavior is just off the charts when he doesn't get his way. And her mom just stays because she's like, well, that's just who he is. And kind of this whole, like, my love can fix him and he just needs more compassion and this kind of stuff. But I mean, it's not okay to be somebody else's punching bag, verbally, emotionally, or physically. And, but at the same time, like, it's hard because she's going to make those choices, but then again, those choices come with consequences. Like my friend, her sister finally was like, they're not welcome at my house because she won't even have it because of he just starts raging and he's such a wild card, and she's got children. She's like, we're not doing this anymore. And so she's basically cut off contact with him. So, I mean, that's the downside of it. It's like a person can martyr themselves and be like, well, I'll just love them unconditionally, no matter how poorly they treat me. It's like, well, then there's consequences to that too. Yeah. Con P says, yeah, it's not okay to be anyone's emotional dumpster. Okay, let's see here. Oh, totally. Rob says people after being with narcissists and abusers are the shells of their former selves. They age 20 years or more and battered. Yes, I agree. It absolutely just sucks the life out of another person. Okay, let's see here. Daniel says, in his situation, his father was a codependent and his mom was the rager. Yeah. And that, of course, that happens too. It's this kind of stuff there's no lines with gender or religion or sexual orientation or any of that. It's just the behavior. It's not anything else. And yeah, that kind of stuff. I think it flies more under the radar when it comes from women that tend to be the ragers. Thank you, Heather B, for the live stream donation. I appreciate that. I had another friend back in junior high, and her dad was awesome. Like, I just adored him. He was such a nice guy, and he was so good. He was so good to his family. And I pretty much lived over there. I was over there every single day. I had so much, I slept over there like the vast majority of the time. They pretty much just took me in. And her dad always made this effort we would go to his softball games. We would go play trivia with him. Like, he just really included us. And he just was, I don't know, he'd ask about like our day. Like, he was just a really involved guy, and his wife and his two daughters were just absolutely horrible to him. It was and he ended up leaving when the youngest graduated from high school. He was out the door like a week after she graduated. And I don't blame him one bit. That poor guy, like, put up with so much for so long. It was just tragic. And I think nobody really identified it because they were female. Okay, let's see here. Michelle, Asks, is there a list of books you recommend? I watch the book club videos, but I would like to read too. There is a list out there, although I did kind of reconfigure my website, so maybe it's not still there. I'll have to check. If it's not there, let me make a note. I'll work on getting it back up. Book club. Book. Recommended book list. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Let's see here. Cfin says, I am done grieving the relationship. I realize I'm still grieving the idealized future I imagined. I'm rebuilding life gradually in my empty nest apartment I call my fortress of solitude. Yeah, I think that, man, that grieving the loss of the idealized future is a hard one. Because odds are, like, a lot of that future, those seeds of that idealized future had been planted probably when you were pretty young, you know? And then when we meet, a person that pretends to be like this perfect partner, it just really feeds into that fantasy. So. Kiara. Okay. Yes. Kiara says, Dana, how do we start being assertive once we have our deal breakers and boundaries? How do we start applying them and not fearing the outcome? This is a tough one. And this is something that I still really work on. I have my mantra. I just repeat to myself, like, you can handle this. You can handle this. And then I guess maybe kind of thinking out, like, what could the worst case scenario outcome be? That they leave, that the friendship ends. And if that's the case, if your friendship is only hanging on by like one conversation with you setting boundaries, with you saying, like, hey, I can't meet you tonight at 7, but can you hang out this weekend? Like, if things are really that fragile, then there's not much there to begin with. So I guess I kind of think of it that way. And then with setting boundaries too, there's a lot to be said for just being tactful when you do go about it, because most other people aren't okay with, like, being assertive is something that's just not a normal thing for like a lot of people. So that can just kind of take some getting used to. But I would start small. I'd start with areas that you do feel okay with addressing. And when you're with the right people, addressing this kind of stuff and setting boundaries and being assertive, it brings the relationship closer. And I think if you can go through that a few times, where you're like, oh my gosh, like, I brought this issue up. I was so concerned. It was so awkward. For me, it was awkward for them. But we were able to get on the same page, and now things are so much smoother. That's intimacy. Like, that's a big part of intimacy. And then it's so cool because you're like, wow, they actually respected my boundary. They listened to me. They took this seriously. Like, that in itself means so much to me. And then the whole relationship just kind of like just levels up, like, every single time that happens. So. Daniel, can you explain? He says, I have a lot of one-sided, quote unquote, friendships with women. Like, one-sided how? And Kiara, excuse me, excuse me, Kiara too, I wanted to say, with the whole being assertive once you have your deal breakers and how do you start applying them? A lot of it just takes getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, I don't know if there really is a time. Some of this stuff does kind of become second nature, and it doesn't even register as like you even setting a boundary, especially with like the smaller stuff. But like the bigger stuff, there might be kind of feelings of like, oh, yikes, like this is so awkward. And I hope they don't get mad at me. And I hope I'm not being overbearing. And I hope I'm not being difficult. And, there's kind of all of these feelings that come up. But sometimes, and I think too, a lot of it is just us learning that we don't need to, we can just feel the way that we feel, and that we don't need to, we can handle the anxiety of how we're feeling. We can handle that discomfort. Whereas like the old us, or the us that we're struggling to kind of grow from, might have been doing a lot of like people pleasing and ingratiating kind of behavior, where it's like, could we do that to get out of the anxiety? So if there's conflict, if there's tension, we might go into like super peacekeeper kind of mode and try to just smooth things over, instead of like, there's a time and place for that. But sometimes like there has to, like, we just have to face that discomfort head on and just like, this isn't working, or, end something. And I think most of us tend to feel like embarrassment or guilt or bad or sad for them, or kind of a wide mix of emotions. And I think you just have to kind of feel them and practice not having that knee-jerk reaction to them, where you're seeking to get out of the anxiety that comes with that. Joshua, welcome. He says, hey, finally made it to one of these live. I've been listening for a couple months. Well, welcome. Nice to have you. Let's see. Oh, before I forget, book club tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The book we're going to be discussing is Facing Codependence by Pia Melody. And book club is something that we do. It's the last Thursday of every month. It's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, and we don't know how long it goes. It's at least an hour. Somewhere between an hour and 2 hours long. I don't know. So I hope to see you guys there tomorrow night. Here, not there, here. Okay, let's see. And that's so true. Dave says, we raise our children until they hit 18, so that at least they have one stable parent. At that point, we realize that our NPD spouse is not what we wish to be alone with the rest of our life. So at 18, divorce is chosen. Yeah, oh, absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind that's what my friend's father did. Their mother was not stable at all. And she had periods of time where she held things together really well, but when she was not doing well, she was really not doing well. And I think there was some mental illness going on there. I think there was alcoholism going on there. Just a wide variety of things. And I think he just knew, he's like, I can't. I think he just was the one stable parent until the kids turned 18. Okay, let's see. And that's got to be so difficult. I can't even imagine anybody that's going through that. Like, CFIN says, wait, 6:30 Eastern? Yes, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time book club tomorrow, last Thursday of every month. That's cool, Jennifer, actually. She says, the other day at work, I was actually in a bad mood for once. Instead of being numb and disassociating completely, I wonder if that means I'm getting better. Well, I think at a minimum, it's a sign that you're starting to tune into how you feel. I think that's huge. It's amazing how we can just become so out of tune with that. And the book, the Facing Codependence book, Pia Melody talks about this. And she talks about, like, she describes like two different types of ways that people do that. She calls them like type A and type B. And I forget which is which, but I think type A people, when they're out of tune, they might know how they feel, but they're not comfortable expressing it, versus a type B person truly just doesn't know. And she goes through this in like many different scenarios. To me, it's brilliant because that's not something that's commonly talked about. It's just all of the differences. There's a whole section in there about like getting in tune with ourselves, basically, and understanding our needs and wants, and that we might, we'll cover it tomorrow, but something along the lines of like, we might not even be in tune with our needs or wants, or we might be in tune with our needs and wants, but aren't comfortable expressing them, or we might confuse our needs and wants. So like you might see this a lot with addiction or eating disorders or compulsions of any kind. I thought that was brilliant, like confusing our needs for our wants. And, like we might need emotional support, but instead we turn to food or alcohol or shopping or, what have you. It's amazing. It's just, I don't know. It's amazing that we can walk around in ourselves and not know how we're feeling about something. Like, that's so weird. I was having a conversation with a guy friend of mine today, and he was saying the same thing. He's like, he just had this huge realization in his life that he was out of tune with some pretty major emotions, and like just realized that, oh my gosh, like how did I not know this about myself? And it's wild. I think that's just like the journey of personal growth, that any person that's curious about themselves goes on. Like, that's when I talk about, like, I don't think most people have this stuff figured out. Like, I really mean it. Like, I really feel like the vast majority of people don't spend time kind of examining these things. They just go through their day. And so in a way, I know it can make us feel like we're profoundly broken or have a ton of work to do. But at the same time, like, it's work worth doing, because as you've probably noticed, like every single realization that you've had about yourself, where you're like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize, like I was substituting support with food, or I didn't realize that I didn't know when I was feeling bad. Like, when you have these aha moments, they're just absolute game changers, because the way that you interact with the world and understand your body and everything, it's just like, it just changes everything. It's so cool. Okay, let's see. Let's scroll up here. Erica says, how long is a good amount of time to date before moving to a more serious, exclusive relationship? Well, I think, it's hard to put like a time frame on these things, but I would say at a minimum 6 months. I think it's more of like the milestones or some like pretty pivotal moments that you want to make sure that you experience during those 6 months or so, or a year, or however long. And I guess maybe it depends how long. What are we talking about as far as like a serious, exclusive relationship? Are we talking like, we're just talking about going from casual dating to like monogamy? If we're talking casual dating to monogamy, I would say within the first few months. And both people like getting, at least having like a clear understanding of what's the purpose of us dating. Like, is the purpose of dating just for fun? Is it to potentially settle down and have a life partner? Is it like, what is it, to get married and to have a life partner? What is each person's goals with this? So you kind of know what you're steering into. But then, yeah, I think, especially when people start becoming like romantically involved, it really helps to be clear and like, are we exclusive or kind of what's going on here? But if we're talking moving from already like monogamy into something that's the next step, like a long-term type relationship, then I would say at that point, it's really important to understand, like, how does this person how do they respond to your boundaries? If you say certain things concern you or upset you, like, do they become defensive? Do they become argumentative? Do they become abusive? Do they spin things around and blame you? How do they handle conflict? How do they handle their money? How do they handle, like, how do they get along with your friends? How do you get along with their friends? These kinds of things. Like, are you guys on the same page with things? Especially, I think, conflict and resolution. How do they handle conflict and resolution? Those are two really big things in life. And what kind of direction are they headed in? So having clarity about those major things are really important, because two people can be hanging out and doing nothing more than having sex and watching movies, but that's only going to get people so far. Like, that's not the nitty gritty stuff of life that a relationship's made up of. And so getting, like, the frustration, the conflict, the resolution, money, the basics, that's stuff that's important to cover. Right. Netflix and chill, Jennifer says. Yeah. Netflix and chill can only go on for so long. Let's see here. Oh, well, thanks, Joshua. He says, I found your YouTube channel from your "Why is this toxic relationship so hard to get over" video. The question from the individual was scarily accurate, and your answers were so right on for me. Well, I'm glad that you were able to get some of the clarity and validation you were seeking. It's we were just talking about this the other day. Angie and I were just talking about this, how people tend to find these types of channels, like, they're trying to make sense out of things and they're not really quite sure, like, what to search for. They just know that there's something wrong and they're just searching. And then it's like pulling a string on a sweater. Like, they find maybe one video or something loosely related to it, and then it's just, the dam just opens up and it's like, oh my gosh, everything starts to make so much sense. Let's see here. Jennifer says, with book club, if we haven't finished the book, are we still able to join, or would it not be wise? Like, should we read it fully to make our own judgments? It takes me so long to read a full book. I think it depends on you. Like, I don't know. I think it's fine to participate in the book club discussions, like in the chat and stuff. If you have, honestly, I don't think most people that attend the book club have actually even read the book. But the topics, I think can definitely be benefit from just listening to the discussion that tends to ensue, because it's all points that are really relevant. I guess it's sort of like listening to a movie review, right? Like, you're kind of like, oh, that makes some sense. But then if you still see the movie, you still form your own opinion. Yeah, I definitely would always encourage you to form your own opinion about things. Because here's the weird thing about books, especially, is everybody's going to get different things out of it based on like where they are with their own understanding and healing. So my takeaways might be very different from somebody else's. I'm continually, hold on, I got to take my socks off. I'm really hot here. I'm continually blown away by like the different takeaway moments that different people have. It's like, it's almost like we read a different book. It's so wild to me. But it's cool. Like, I like that because like they just pick up on things that I wouldn't have. So, okay. Oh, that's much better. Let's see here. Yeah, Missouri Cowboy says, Jennifer, do the book club anyways. If the book sounds good, you can finish it then. Yeah, that's probably a good way to go about it. Okay, let me scroll down here. Let's Be Real says, I'm still dealing with some anger and dissociative symptoms, flooded random thoughts, amnesia, forgetfulness, numbness, etc. Yeah, it's really wild the ways that our brain tries to process trauma. But everything that you're describing is very normal. And there's a lot, here's the thing too, like it's a lot, there's so much that goes on. There's so much that actually goes on, and then there's so much that goes on that we didn't realize that was going on, like the manipulation component of it. And when a person gets out and they start putting all the pieces together, I think part of this, like forgetting and remembering and putting pieces together differently, I think a lot of that has to do with manipulation and just trying to make sense out of like a nonsensical situation and seeing it clearly for the first time, perhaps ever. Oh, thanks, Jules. Says, hello. Thank you for making this real. You are so appreciated. I thank you for that. I'm glad I'm able to do this. Chris says, narcissism amongst gals in their mid to late 30s is growing. Toxicity abounds. Yeah, Let's Be Real says, narcissism is just created by our society. I think there's so many different factors at play with narcissism nowadays. It is scary. It's scary to think even about like the next generation, where all that's going to be. And then you've got, social media and stuff that just really feeds unhealthy egos. And I was here's another video. Travis and I were watching, I think it was last night. It was like, I fall down all of these strange holes in YouTube, but I was watching this video. I won't say who it is, but it's a fairly big YouTuber. And he's a younger guy. I was 21, I think. And it was so weird to both Travis and I, because he was talking about his channel and everything he was doing, but it was only in terms of numbers. He's like, well, yes, I have, I don't know, whatever, 40,000 Instagram followers. And I've gotten like all of these subs in the past 30 days. And it was all just the numbers behind it. And like how many likes he had on something. And Travis just looked at me and he's like, that is really twisted. And I was like, yeah, it's weird because I feel like I kind of straddle these different worlds. Like I understand all of the metrics and like why he would want to look at them, but I cannot even imagine being like having yourself, the self-worth being based on that. Like that's such it would be a very difficult way to live. But I know like a lot of like younger people do that. Like it's just this validation of like, oh, people liked my photos, so they like me, so therefore I'm okay. And yeah, you do see this with a lot of women too, that just put up a lot of like guys too, I guess, like super sexy pictures. And it's just this constant need for validation. It's a easy way to get it, but it's not, there's no substance there. Eerie Rising says, yes, the YouTuber's over sense of self-importance. It's bizarre. I've only recently come across that sort of thing. Yeah, it's, and I could see how like that could really change a person if you had a really huge YouTube, like if you're like Jenna Marbles or somebody like that who was in millions of subscribers and all of that. But I don't know, but I don't feel like it really changed her. Like I feel like a person has, if you have like a pretty solid sense of self and you're able to stay grounded enough, then you just are excited to be able to do what you love, you know, like it doesn't change the core of who you are. But I think for a lot of people, if there's already that unhealthy ego, it just makes a person a lot stranger, like a lot more narcissistic or delusional or insecure, or like it just doesn't, I don't know, stuff needs to be addressed. Let's Be Real says, I feel like I could be schizo. Could this just be from the trauma? Because I actually feel like I'm mad with the flooded thoughts, the constant rumination, irrational thinking, emotional problems. I guess I would look at it this way. Like, were you like this before? So if you weren't like this before, then it's most likely, you know, if you're talking like schizoaffective disorder, like it's probably not a mood disorder if you weren't like this before. It's probably, a lot of this is PTSD. It's these PTSD type symptoms. They do tend to get better with time. But an understanding of kind of like emotional regulation and all of this, allowing yourself to feel how you feel. And there's just kind of this time period where your emotions are just all over the place. Like your life just feels really blown apart. And it takes a while to reassemble that into some sort of cohesive whole. But here's the thing too, and you probably heard me talk about this. I think one of the biggest points that trips people up is people tend to think that healing means going back to the way that they were. And it doesn't mean that. Healing means moving forward and to like the next level. So life is always about growth. It's never about going backwards. So I think it's important as we're healing, as we're moving forward, to kind of set define a new normal for ourselves. It doesn't have to be that complete emotional dysregulation is your new normal, but like there's all of this like disequilibrium that accompanies change, and it especially accompanies trauma. And so what you're going through, even though it's incredibly unpleasant and it's just awful, it's normal for what you've been through. And so then it's going to be, okay, kind of defining this new normal. Like, how do I understand the world? How do I understand myself? How do I learn to trust again? How do I, function? And there's so much to all of this healing, but I would say like a big part of it too is like self-compassion and just realizing when all of these emotions come up, it can be so easy to get pulled down with them and to feel so discouraged and broken when that stuff kind of surfaces. But I think if you can realize, yeah, the way that you feel, even though it's uncomfortable, it's very normal. And it's okay to feel the way that you feel, you know? Yeah. Jeffrey says, yeah, those things are born from trauma. It's a matter of where it came from. Yeah. Daniel says, getting away from toxic people and places is good for your soul and emotional well-being. Hooray says, how do you balance feeling sorry and having empathy for your former abuser? I know he had an abusive childhood. I am out and healing after 26 years. I am flooded with guilty feelings. One of the things that Pia Mellody talks about in this book, The Facing Codependence, is boundaries around our feelings. And this was another, there's so many, I just love her. Like there's so much in this book. And she talks about when we tend to feel guilt as a result, around boundaryless people. Okay. So like abusers, they have no boundaries. We tend to feel guilt because they don't. So we understand that their actions are hurtful and harmful. And instead of them having an appropriate level of guilt, it's that like, it's hard for, it's sort of like if we feel embarrassed for another person, if some, it's like if they don't feel embarrassment, it's sort of like that embarrassment's got to go somewhere. So then like we take it on because they don't have it. So if a person acts in a way where they have no shame, that they have no guilt, then it's kind of left to other people to feel that for them because they're not feeling it. But that's a boundary violation on our end. So it's kind of this, I think she called it carried. It's like carried guilt or carried shame. So we're carrying guilt because they're guiltless. We're carrying their shame because they're shameless. The problem with that is it's not our feelings to carry. It's not, we don't have control over their actions. Like these are emotions that really they should be experiencing, not us. And so when we start feeling guilt, I think it can help to realize that this is not yours. Like this is not yours to carry. I can understand feeling, I think maybe like a healthier version, we'll put it that way. A healthier version of that is feeling compassion. And we can have that awareness of, yeah, this is probably, an abusive childhood doesn't help, right? Like that can really shape a person into something terrible. And if things had been different, maybe they would have been different. We can have compassion. Like that's really tragic that this happened to you. But it doesn't make how they treat you okay. And it's also only one piece of the puzzle. Like there's lots of people that are abused that don't go on to become abusive. So at some point, it's like the saying goes, like we're not responsible for the abuse, but we are responsible for the healing. Like we're still responsible for our behavior no matter what happens to us. And like, it's tragic when you see a person that just doesn't, probably will never have like healthy boundaries or a functional life. And they just don't get it. Like they don't get that they are their own worst enemy, that they will never have a functional relationship until they get that figured out, and that nobody else's love can save them. It's tragic. There's no getting through to somebody that doesn't have that kind of accountability or self-awareness. And all we can do is focus our energy on us and like breaking the cycle and, feeling our own feelings, I guess, is a big part of it instead of feeling their feelings. So I guess to answer your question, when we have these feelings of like guilt and feeling sorry for them, I think just sending it back, just realizing this is not mine to carry, and then realizing, you can feel compassion for them, you can feel bad for them, you can wish them light and love, but it's always from a safe place of self-protection. Like I might feel really sorry for this person, or a lot of compassion for this person, but it's got to be from like a safe distance. Sort of like I'd used in another video, like the example of it's like a rabid puppy. You know, like the puppy's so cute and it's so tragic that this dog has rabies and like you can't get near it and it can't be trusted and it's, you know, but you've got to keep a healthy distance because it's gonna hurt everybody around it, whether it means to or not. Okay, Daniel says, what if somebody inadvertently crossed someone's boundaries? Well, and that happens probably more often than not. So like there's certain understandings which I think fall under the category of like just normal adult behavior, right? Like a person shouldn't have to be told, don't cuss at me, don't yell at me, don't hit me, don't spit on me, you just, like, people have these kinds of basic understandings of how to treat other people. They get this in kindergarten. So if a person doesn't have like the basics of how to behave and how to get along well with others by kindergarten, there's a really big problem there. And to me, that's like, you can be assertive, but I wouldn't even, I just would start distancing myself from that person because that's like egregious behavior. Like that's outrageous behavior. As far as like other boundary violations, nobody knows where another person's boundaries are unless we make them known. So for example, and sometimes, you know, a lot of times it's context. So how you might joke with a friend is going to be different than how you might joke with me, right? So some people are more like situationally aware of like when it's okay to tell certain jokes or when it's okay to talk about certain topics. And some people aren't. And some people, even if there is like a high degree of self-awareness or situational awareness there, sometimes you just don't know. I mean, I think back to, I used to work, this was years ago, I used to work for a builder, and like me and the builder and his brother, we all had a very similar sense of humor. We cussed and we just told all kinds of jokes and nothing was off limits. Like we were all on the same page. The interior designer did not have the same sense of humor at all. And it took me a while to kind of realize that, because I just didn't get, like, how do you not find some of this stuff funny? Like, oh, you just need to lighten up, right? But the reality was that was her boundary, and it was just something that manners kind of dictate. Like, I needed to be the one to change that since my behavior was making her uncomfortable, right? So I did finally, like, okay, we're not just gonna tell certain jokes, or we're just not gonna, whatever, be a certain way in the office, because, you know, which is fine. So I don't know, like, but she had to say something, because the rest of the culture of the office was not that way. So had she not said anything, it would not have registered that was a problem. You know, just like you might be okay if you've got a good friend who calls, you might be okay with them calling you at 2:00 in the morning, where you might not be okay with your ex-girlfriend calling you at 2:00 in the morning. It's just, there's context matters. So it's just whatever is okay with you. Like, your boundaries are an extension of like what's okay with you. But in order to know what's okay with you, it helps significantly to be in tune with your feelings. So let's say that same situation, right? Like, your ex-girlfriend calls you at 2:00 in the morning. You don't want anything to do with her. You don't care about what kind of problems she's having in her life, or her new boyfriend issues, or she needs a ride or whatever. Like, you're like, I don't care. Feeling that irritation, and because these are the signs of a boundary violation, where you're like irritated, you're frustrated, you're annoyed. Generally, somebody's crossed that boundary. And so how you might handle that, it would be any number of ways. Like, you might just tell her, you know, hey, I'm sorry you're going through this. Like, don't call me. Or you might not even answer the phone, or you might block her number, or whatever you do to kind of restore that sense of peace in your life, you know? Yeah. Daniel says people's boundaries are invisible without knowing them. To an extent. But like I was saying, some of this stuff is is just kind of considered the basics of getting along. Even my example of how we all used to joke around in this one office, even that was kind of extreme. Like that was poor boundaries on my end to not realize that not everybody would joke like that. You know, my boundaries were very different. This was 15 years ago. My boundaries are very different then than they are today. But, you know, it's like if somebody says to you, hey, that's not okay with me, or I don't like to be touched like that, or I don't find that funny, or this is intimidating, or whatever, like they're setting their boundary, and then it's going to be up to you to how to respond to that, and vice versa. Okay. Right. Absolutely. Kiara says, and sometimes people are not even narcissists. They're just super toxic. Don't get caught up in the labor. Don't get caught up in the labor. I'm going to say, don't get caught up in the terminology. You'll let other abusers slip through the cracks. I think seeing the bigger picture, really knowing what's acceptable for you and what's not acceptable for you, and learning how to communicate that to other people. Like this is what all of this just boils down to. And a big part of self-love and understanding our feelings and all of this stuff is knowing yourself well enough to know when you're being mistreated. And so many of us, we weren't even aware when we were being mistreated. And so it was for a wide variety of reasons. We were glossing over it. And then when a person kind of realizes, oh my God, I didn't even realize I was being abused. Like I knew things were off. I knew that there were issues and this, that, and the other, but I didn't realize it makes total sense that I was abused because I feel like I have PTSD and I feel like my world is blown apart and I feel ground down and like I'm 100 years old, you know? So like those kinds of realizations wake a person up. And then the next question that tends to follow is, how did I not realize this? And then that's just part of just pulling that string on a sweater and then getting back in tune with like, what does it feel like when you feel like you're being mistreated, or when somebody's crossed a boundary, or when somebody's mean to you or rude to you? Like, can you tell when somebody's mistreating you? It's a big, big, important thing. Let's see. Oh, chat's flying by. Mo says, I try to be neutral so I can pick up on the red flags faster without giving anyone a piece of my life to bite on it. Yeah, it's interesting. So like another friend of mine, we were talking today, and the situation came up about having trust issues. And there's this other person who is like this, comes across as like this amazing person. And he's like, well, I don't know, I might have some trust issues and this, that, and the other. And I was like, that's the thing. Like I've learned with all of this is like, we don't need to have concrete proof. Like if somebody is sending off, if somebody's doing something that's not sitting well with you, we don't even have to decide right away. Like you set the pace, like if you come across somebody that's really charming and seemingly too good to be true, like you can set the pace with that and just go slow. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have trust issues. It just means that you have a healthy degree of skepticism. And that's such a big thing. I feel like everybody goes through this when they start getting out there and meeting new people again or dating again, especially if they come across somebody who's like really likable or like really charming, and they want so much to believe that person is for real, and they might be. However, time hasn't shown us anything, so we hardly know them. And so it's that consistent behavior over time that'll show you everything that you need to see. And yeah, if people are like You're setting boundaries, they're steamrolling over them, they become abusive, they start running hot and cold, start doing silent treatment, they start all kinds of stuff like that. Like that's, that's time to leave. Yeah, let's be real says, yeah, and the people that doubt your pain are jerks too. Yeah, I agree. Kiara says, Dana, sometimes I feel like I have to be some sort of mystic in order to see people's true colors. Observing behavior isn't enough. And like my dad says, when you meet people, you meet their representative. Yeah, and this is why it's so helpful to you set the pace. So if you're on the fence about somebody and you're like, I don't know, like this person might be legit, like they seem like they seem too good to be true. But if you want to find out, if you're not certain, if you want to cut bait, like if they're not love bombing you, right? Like let's say it's a coworker and you're like, well, I don't know. Like I can't really tell if this person's amazing or if they're problematic and they're just superficially charming. Time will tell you what you need to know. It's just going slow and allowing, like just going slow, keeping them kind of at arm's length as far as the information that you tell them, and just respecting yourself enough to be like, I don't know, like I don't have a good read on this person. And I feel like with other people, I don't feel like I don't feel so questioning of if they're too good to be true or like something's off, you know? Yeah, and I agree. Let's be real says the too good to be true is a big red flag sometimes. I agree completely. And that's uh, one of the, I mean, it's so important to set the pace, like to always set the pace, especially if you're feeling something's off, whether you're feeling like a feeling of danger or like a predatory kind of thing, or like, ooh, I don't know if that person can be trusted. Or if you're feeling the opposite, like this person seems so charming and so wonderful and everything I've been looking for, like either extreme is a concern. And so it's just, and frankly, with everybody that doesn't send off those vibes, just people in general, it's just a good idea to set the pace, to go slow, to realize that you truly are, like Kiara said, you are meeting their representative. And you don't really know a person until, frankly, until you've disagreed with them. Then you kind of find out more about like, how do they handle conflict? How do they handle resolution? How do they handle stress? All of these kinds of things. And it just takes time to see like, how do they interact with other people? The more that they tell you, are there things that are adding up or not adding up? It just takes time to get a more fleshed out picture. Crystal says, my narcissist is absolutely the too good to be true type. Yeah, both of mine were as well. That was what confused me for so long. Like, I'm like, they were not the arrogant, brash, like difficult, demanding types. They were totally Prince Charming. Everybody loved them. Overly helpful, like just amazing. Like you would not have ever guessed. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to scroll up here. And let's be real. It was talking about a girl. It says that she left me for her. Wait. She just left me for her ex. She was kind of shy, then really wild. She says she cares. And then she was saying that she was just sexually abused. And it just sounds like that whole situation was all over the place. I think when we find ourselves in those kinds of situations with people that are just kind of all over the place like that, it can be really helpful to think about what are you looking for? You know, like like the more I think specific you can be about that. And then when you're dating, you're basically looking, it's like filling a job position, really. It's like, these are the skills, like these are this is the criteria that I'm looking for. And to go slow, because as all of us can attest to, like, anything is easy to get into, it's much harder to get out of. And a lot of these relationships, especially if they start off with intensity of any kind, they can become such a whirlwind, and they can feel so amazing. And it can be one of those things where you just want to jump in head first. And then over time, it just leaves a person just absolutely devastated, like emotionally and physically and financially and psychologically and every way, shape, or form. And, you go through that enough times and you're like, I'm done. Like, I'm to the point where it's like, I want to value my time and my energy and my emotions and my heart. And I'm just going to be a lot more choosy about who I let into my life and to what level. That's a good point. And Salon says, yes, and some narcopaths say that they were abused as a pity ploy to get you to empathize with them. Yes, I would agree. That's something to watch out for. And this just still goes back to us setting the pace. Like, it is a pretty common ploy for abusive people to tell you, which may or may not be true, about, their abusive ex or their abusive childhood. It's kind of the whole thing, like, we don't tend to fear what we pity. And so it's a great test to see, like, who has strong boundaries. Because if they're coming right out of the gate with some sort of sad story like this, and they're quick to just kind of vomit up all of this, like, intense personal stuff right out of the gate, that's major boundary violation kind of stuff. And, people with functional boundaries, with healthy boundaries, they see that as, like, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Like, it's too much too soon. Either this person's incredibly manipulative or they haven't healed. But either way, that's heavy lifting for the healthy person. It's like, I don't want to have to, like, this person needs a therapist. They don't need a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Like, they need a therapist. Or this person is just a total, like, they have no boundaries and they're incredibly manipulative. And you can kind of get a feel for, like, what you're dealing with if you're moving slow enough to where you're not so emotionally invested right off the bat. So you can see this stuff so much more clearly when you're not emotionally invested in it. But normally you can kind of tell the difference between, I feel like this person's kind of selling me a story versus this person isn't healed. But either way, like I said, I wouldn't get involved with either of that, because it's not most likely not going to end well. Yeah, Daniel says oversharing is no good. Kiara says, Dana, I hate the idea that we just have to wait and see if people are going to abuse or mistreat us, and time will tell. I hate being collateral damage. It makes me feel helpless. I can see why you might feel that way, but here's the thing: is this is something that all people do. They're just maybe not aware that they're doing it. So healthy people that have never been abused, and or healthy people, okay, do this. They set the pace. They're continually kind of taking the temperature of their relationship. If they're adjusting, it's like a sailor, like they're adjusting the sails along the way. You're kind of trying to navigate things. If something major happens, they reevaluate. Whereas a lot of us, that might be more on, like, the people pleasing, kind of ingratiating side of the spectrum, where we're over giving of second chances and 20-second chances and excuses and minimizations and justifications. And, we don't have boundaries and standards and deal breakers. If we have that mindset of, like, I'll just be in this relationship until I can no longer stay here, until I can no longer hang on, though that's a sign of some major boundary issues, major boundary issues. Whereas healthy people are like, hey, you know what, man, I really like you. Like, I really want to be in a relationship. You know, of course, like they set the pace, right? Things progress. They're in this relationship. Man, this is so amazing. This is so wonderful. Things keep going. If things start kind of veering off course, they're assertive. They bring them up. They realize that things have got to get back on course because they're just not going to get dragged through hell. And so then if something happens, if the person does start showing signs of, here's the thing, generally, the vast majority of time, these problematic behaviors, the jealousy, the control, the squirrely behavior, the superficial charm, the things not adding up, like all of this stuff tends to really be there really early on, like really, really early on. It's just we weren't seeing it for what it was. So, and the more you practice these skills, the more you don't second guess yourself. Like you just see it for what it is much sooner. You're able to respond and get out of it much quicker. And I think it's, you know, there's just like a lot of the wrong people out in the world. And, you know, but like a healthy, functional person really values having peace in their life. And so they might really like this other person, but they're like, man, I can't handle, like, I didn't realize, you know, that you had this major stuff going on in your life, or like that this is how you handled conflict or money or these other things. Like, I can't do this. You know, this is not what I want for my life. And they might have a lot of sadness and pain that this relationship is ending, but at the same time, they're like, I can't be married to somebody who's a hoarder or an alcoholic or who's going through all of it or abusive. Like, I can't. Like, it's going to destroy my world, and my world is worth protecting. Bonnie says, squirrely behavior from narcopaths is the right description of them. Yeah. And Nikki says, this is true. I can see toxicity so much clearer now. Yeah. Jeffrey says, yeah, toxic people seem to be allergic to peace. Right. Especially if you guard that peace. It's amazing. And here's the thing, like when you do start getting back out there, when you really just make this a priority of like, I have peace in my life. When you make that, this is like a number one value of, I value my time and my energy and my emotions and my space and my life. Like, that's just a given. You just don't even get tangled. I mean, if somebody flies under your radar and gets in your life, you get them out really quickly. Like, there isn't this, it's not this really difficult decision, depending on, you know, like when you see them. But generally there might be a lot of sadness of like, oh man, there might be a lot of sadness of after the fantasy ending. Of like, oh man, this person, I thought they were so amazing. We had so much in common. They might have had a great sense of humor. They might have been vegetarian. They might have, I don't know, had all kinds of stuff in common with you. But then you realize, like, yeah, I'm gonna miss that. Like, there were things about them that I really will miss. But man, this like deal breaker stuff is outrageous. Like, there is no future with somebody like that. Like, I can't do that. And really, nobody else can either. So like, even if they do move forward and get married or whatever, it's not like they're going to go live happily ever after. It's going to be another person that's just going to hang on until they can't hang on anymore. Because nobody can live with that. So, okay, let's see here. Bonnie says, yes, talking to Rob, she says, you're so right. They keep coming back for every drop of supply from you, even though they've already destroyed your life. Wow, that's really deep. Let's Be Real says, my personality is just my emotions at this point. Wow. Oh man, that's so relatable. That's so well said. Um, and I think you are where you are in like the stage of healing, and like this state of like disequilibrium where, this painting, I don't know if you saw this before. Can you see this down here? This painting of like this alien looking dude. This is from Healthy Love, who's in the chat normally, but she's not here tonight. This is from Healthy Love, and this painting is called Who Am I? And it's one of my absolute favorite paintings of hers because I thought it captures exactly what you're describing so freaking well. And it's that moment where like we don't even really recognize ourselves anymore. We feel like an alien, and other people don't recognize us, and we're just walking around feeling so profoundly alone and like just misunderstood, and like we have trouble even communicating with other people. Like they're everything that's going on in their life and things that they want to talk about are just so foreign to us, and we're foreign to ourselves. And like you're saying, like your personality is just composed of emotions, and sometimes those emotions are just numbness or anger. So I really liked that painting because you're not alone in that. You're so not alone in that. Bonnie says, we become like sad zombies. Eerie Rising says, yes, Dana, it's hard to recognize myself. Often I say to myself, I miss me. Yeah. But that a lot of those good qualities in you are still there. It's just, it's like a bomb goes off in your life and you have to sometimes dig out things of value out of that rubble. This was a long, maybe not necessarily long, but like it was an uphill climb for me to reconnect with certain parts of my personality. I really had to force myself to smile. And what helped was just getting determined, that I was going to smile again, and that I was going to feel like a sexual person again, and that I was going to be able to experience joy again, and that I was going to be able to experience, these different emotions, and just getting determined of like, yeah, I'm going to experience, I'm not going to let them take that from me. I'm not going to let them take that from me. And then really making a concerted, there were times I would go into the mirror and just smile. Like, because I didn't feel like it. And I wanted to. I just didn't want that to be taken from me. And so I had to learn how to smile again. And so many things, like having to just wake up different parts of yourself and reconnect with that it's a thing. Like it's a thing. Let's see. Jennifer says, yeah, I struggle with making eye contact. Yeah, lots of great comments going on here. Sorry, getting caught up in the chat. I like that. New Me says, yes, I agree. We have to rediscover ourselves, who we were and are at the core. My mantra is, it is my God-given right to feel joy, to be joyful and fun again. Yeah. 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 I was talking to Healthy Love the other day, and she was saying something I really liked when she was having critical thoughts come up, or really kind of self-defeating thoughts. she pictured them as like some sort of concrete, like tangible thing. And then she would visualize herself throwing them into the fire. And I really liked that because it's like we can decide like what we choose to own and what we choose to disown and realize that's not me. Like a lot of this heaviness, this darkness, this like muck is the abuse. It's from the abuser. This is not me. And maybe even if it surfaces some stuff in you that you're like, I think that actually might be me, you can still choose to be like, you know what, this stuff's, I don't need this in my, at this chapter in my life. Like, I don't want this or need this. Like, I want to take it to the next level. And in that next level, like, I want joy. I want lightness. I want authenticity with other people, with myself. I want to be connected. I want to have quality relationships with other people and with myself and, with all of this. Okay, let's see. Kiara says, ever since I was a child growing up in abuse, my mantra was, God will repay me tenfold for all the time I've lost. It kept me going. Yeah, and one of the things that I had held on to was just the realization that, most of your best days are still ahead of you. They are, like they really, really are. It's whether or not that we can see them for what they are or to make them happen is another story, but they are like, there's potential, there's raw potential in front of you. Like you can move forward into things that are positive, like life can go on. Your life can be, in many ways, it can be significantly better than it was before. Oh my gosh, this is a long name. We'll just say DJ. DJ says, can recovering from abuse come across as narcissism? I think it can, yes, in terms of it can come across. I think a person can have a high degree of self-absorption after they've gone through any type of trauma. It's the forefront of their brain. So they might be at a place where like that's really all that they can talk about or think about, which might come across as self-absorption to other people because they're not taking an interest in how other people's day is going or what things are going on with them. So there's that. And then also like the emotional dysregulation that tends to accompany any type of trauma, especially abuse. So you've got this really kind of dysregulated person whose emotions are all over the place and they might become very highly reactive. So they're easily triggered. That can come across as incredibly abusive behavior to other people. This is why I'm not a fan of people dating right away. I would say wait at least a solid year. Really learn to get back in tune with yourself, in tune with your emotions. Get to the place where you're not looking for another person to like complete you or to heal you or whose love you need to make you feel whole. Like there's a lot of I think work that needs to be done before we can date in a healthy way. So we're talking book club tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Pia Melody's Facing Codependence. I am a big fan of all of her work. I think that a lot of it can really help a person supercharge like their understanding and their healing as far as examining our boundaries. Even if you don't identify with being codependent, I guarantee you, if you've ever been in a relationship with an abusive or exploitative person, your boundaries have been eroded in ways that you're not even aware of. And it's really, so like this book, this codependence book, like there's so many things in there that I think we just need to start like square one and start examining, okay, what pieces do we need to figure out and put back into place, and like what pieces we never even had. that we're maybe missing from childhood that we need to supplement. So I know that the term codependence or codependency turns a lot of people off, and I get that. I was there for decades, but there's so much that we can squeeze out of that. So I just encourage you to keep an open mind, and I think James will be here tomorrow night. Healthy Love will be here tomorrow night. We're just going to squeeze as much as we can out of this book. Let's see. Boundary. Bonnie asks, how do you get your boundaries back? Well, it's really difficult to get boundaries back if you're still with an abuser. So trying to be, because a big part of boundaries is that boundaries have a consequence, and if you're with an abuser and you're not able to leave for whatever reason, and I'm not, if you've been together for 30 years and you're terrified to leave and there's a lot of finances and stuff like that, I get it. There's no judgment. It's very difficult to try to set boundaries with a person who's spent the past 30 something years steamrolling over them and always getting their way. So with that said, I think there's kind of really picking and choosing your battles. But it's really, it's next to impossible to have healthy, assertive communication with somebody who's not interested in that. It really takes two people that have that commitment to each other of like, I want this to work. The only way this is going to work is if we can be assertive with each other, if we can compromise, if we can work as a team. That's kind of a rare thing to find two people that are able to do that. As far as other people go, like setting boundaries in this, and even I will say it's even difficult with other people that have been in your life because you've been doing this dance with them for a long time. And when you start changing up the dance, if they're always used to, oh, we'll ask Bonnie, Bonnie will give us money, Bonnie will loan us money, Bonnie will pet sit for us, or she'll just watch our kids for us, or Bonnie will do it, right? Bonnie always says yes. If everybody that's been Bonnie's role for all of these years, it's really difficult when you start saying no and start asserting yourself. Other people don't often, they're like, oh my gosh, is she mad at us? Like, what's wrong? They're used to just getting their way. And so when you stop giving them their way, they don't know what to do with that. People might view it as you being rude or mean, or they might be confused, or they might not have any problem with it whatsoever. Like, these things tend to kind of go a variety of ways. But I will say it's not uncommon for a person to have this kind of great turnover, I guess, in their life, where they start realizing I need to start setting boundaries, and they start doing this. And then a lot of their friends and people that I've known for a long time, they don't know. They're like, oh, like they don't like that. They're not okay with you being assertive or you saying no or not giving into them. So it's very common for people to have to really do this, like, make new friends and kind of do this great purging of a lot of people in their life. So, but getting back in tune with like setting boundaries, it starts with understanding when your boundaries are crossed. So it goes back to understanding, being in tune enough with how you feel, especially the feelings of like frustration, anger, resentment, irritation. Those are some of like the early signs of like boundary violations. Confusion, but generally like resentment, anger, frustration, irritation, signs of boundary violation. So when you can kind of tell like, oh, that kind of did not sit well with me. Like that joke wasn't funny, or I didn't like how that person talked to me or touched me, or they asked to borrow money and I'm not okay with that. So then it's up to us to kind of say, oh, I just didn't, that joke wasn't funny to me, or please don't joke with me that way, or I find this offensive, or I'm sorry, I decided I don't loan money to family and friends anymore. It just, Uh, it changes the dynamic, and I don't like it. These kinds of things. That's a great question. Lots of great questions. Rob says, "Hey Dana, if I co-own a house with my ex, how do I keep no contact and watch out for any financial problems she might cause?" Are you here in the United States? I guess first and foremost. If you are you on the deed to the house, and like are you on the mortgage? Like are you on the loan and on the title, I guess? If you are on both of those, you're Canadian. Okay, so I'm not sure. That might be totally a different thing over there. I'm not sure. At a minimum, I would watch your credit report. And I would also see about not owning the house together. So if you can do a buyout, or if she can do a buyout for you, or if you can see about her refinancing the house, and just having it under her name, so you're off the mortgage. Like here in the United States, she can get you off of the title. Like you can do like a quit claim and get a person off of the title. But however, if you're still on the mortgage, you're still responsible for the mortgage. That's still going to impact your credit and everything else. So I would see if there's any way that you could talk her into refinancing it under her name, under her credit, and you getting off of that. Let's see here. Jennifer says, okay, this is a good question too. With all of the talk of like social justice warriors, I'm not sure, what is NPCs? I don't know what NPC stands for. Lately online, how do you know when your boundaries go too far? So here's the thing with boundaries. So like we can set a boundary. So boundaries are not meant to control other people. They're meant to just keep us safe. So I agree. Like there's some stuff out there that's like kind of a lot of like the political extreme, like political correct, where it's like you must do this, you can't say this, you da da da, where it's very controlling of other people, and it's very dictating of like you must act like this. And I think it's always nice to just err on the side of like politeness. To me, it's just not even worth the stress of any of that. But if a person's like, you know what, I'm just not going to do certain things, they have that right. So we can set a boundary. So like, for example, remember I was talking about that work environment, right? Where we all joked this certain way. We had one coworker who didn't. She was older. She was conservative. She was very religious. Like I didn't know these things about her at the time, or I probably never would have joked like that. But anyways, she had said some things, and it's just, we kind of kept on. Like we didn't respect that boundary, which was not very nice of us, because then it made it an uncomfortable work situation for her. Finally, when we realized like she's not joking, like the way we interact really does bother her, then we changed how we began doing things. Just because we liked her, like we didn't want to make her uncomfortable, like that wasn't the goal. We just thought we were hilarious. Like, and so we modified our behavior, but it was out of respect for her, even though it took a little while for us to really realize that she really meant it. Like she didn't think that our humor was funny or appropriate. Everybody's got a different line in the sand, and it's just this continual kind of navigation of that. So like if you set the boundary of, and here's the part, like healthy boundaries have consequences, right? So let's say, for example, you and I are in that situation where we're coworkers and you're setting a boundary. Dana, this is not, you think you're so funny and you're not. Like, quit joking about these certain things. Like, it's just not funny. Or, and I've had coworkers too that have thought the same thing. That have had really raunchy humor that I found incredibly distasteful and didn't want to hear it. But I never said anything, not because it didn't bother me, but because I was always the kind of go with the flow personality, which wasn't okay either. So that was a problem. But if you and I were coworkers and something were to happen, it would be important to like bring that up. And then we would have to just kind of navigate that line, or vice versa, And it's the same thing in relationships. It's the same thing with family, what have you. But people tend, the more comfortable a person is, and that like they know that they're settled in, that you're not going anywhere. Like if your family, if you have a child with them, the less inclined they're going to be, frankly, to potentially respect the boundary, because it's sort of like, I should say that's not true. I would say for a lot of people, that is the case. A lot of dysfunctional people, that's the case. People that truly value other people, they understand like, hey, we're in this for the long haul. I want you in my life for the next 50 years. And I want you to be happy. Like, I want you to enjoy my company, and I want to enjoy your company for the next 50 years. And I want to make this enjoyable. And so the way to do that is for us to bring this stuff up when it bothers us. And you might bring something up to a significant other and they might think it's ridiculous. They just don't get it. But if there is that solutions-oriented communication there, like, and if you can say it in such a way of like, no, for real, like, I mean this, like, this is a big deal for me. Like, could you please, don't do this. Like, it really bothers me. If they respect you and they respect the relationship, they'll change. But it's not in a controlling way. It's this is a respect, it's just based on respect for the other person. Jennifer says, yeah, I'm definitely a go with the flow type of person. Yeah, I think a lot of us are, and not realizing that that's being people pleasing, and that's a sign of poor boundaries. It's hard. It's difficult. It's difficult to, I think, when you are a go with the flow kind of person, to get comfortable handling conflict. I mean, this is something that I still really struggle with. It's just not kind of how we're wired, but it's an important part of being assertive, because being assertive is like a mild form of conflict, Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Daniel says, sometimes my personality crosses people's boundaries by accident. Oh, sure. And I think we all are that way, because we don't know. I mean, or we don't realize the extent, or if we really, like I was saying, back when I was joking around at the office, we really didn't see any harm with it. It was just another situation with humor gone wrong was, and I've told the story before, my mom, this was back in the day, like back in the 80s with Saturday Night Live. And my mom is very Christian. And there was this skit that Dana Carvey used to play the church lady. And anything wrong that would ever happen, Dana Carvey would say, oh, well, maybe it's Satan. And somehow my brother and I got on this kick, and we were just like repeating that, well, maybe it's Satan. Well, maybe it's Satan. We were just going around. Tears were streaming down our face. I don't know why it was so funny at the time, but it was. And my mom was getting so upset and she kept grounding us and it was like charging $1 every time we would say that. She's like, just stop saying that. And we didn't because we thought it was hilarious. So like there's been a handful of times where like, boundaries have been crossed. We weren't even really trying to upset her. She just didn't find the joke funny. And I don't know, I don't know. You do what you can, I guess. But I would say the basics of treating other people with decency more often than not is a good rule of thumb. Rob, okay, says, yeah, he's like, I'll look into the mortgage and buyout strategy. So far, it's status quo, and she's agreed to pay the mortgage to keep the place unsold. I would really highly recommend that you don't have this go on indefinitely. Like these, even if it does end well, it's going to be something that's hanging over your head. And I don't know how credit works in Canada, but here, that's still counted. If your name's on it, it's still showing up as, I don't know, let's say the house is worth $100,000, that you have $100,000, that you're still on the hook for $100,000 worth of debt. So it's going to negatively, or it's going to impact your ability to potentially buy something down the road. So it might be something, I don't know if there's an attorney involved. I don't know if that can be a conversation where maybe you shoot for like in the next 3 years, that the plan is going to be for her to refinance the property within, like, I would specify a certain amount of time. So then that way you have there's some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. You can move on with your life. You're not having to worry about her potentially doing something or like it's just a non-issue. After that point, you can sleep easy and just drive on with your life. Let's see, scrolling up. Missouri Cowboy says he was programmed in a dysfunctional family, a church, and a society. It sucks. Yes. Yes, it is. And it's a lot it's that so many different levels of like realization, and to peel back and be like, okay, like, stuff that we just need to heal from and like work through. It's wild. It's wild that this stuff's not discussed earlier, like young, like at the age of 8, maybe even younger, like these conversations should be happening. So we just really don't, I don't know. I just think these conversations should happen sooner because everybody experiences these kind of like rude wake-up calls of the world is not how we were led to believe. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Yeah, okay, good deal, Rob. He says, yeah, you're right. I have a local lawyer set up and she should buy me out soon. Yeah, her doing something is stressing me. Thanks so much. Yeah, I don't blame you. But I think like that kind of a situation, you're doing everything in your power. Like you've got an attorney lined up, like working towards some sort of like dissolution date where it's like the house, this stress in your life is going to be a non-issue. And if she does anything, you'll cross that bridge when you get there. Like I know it's easier said than done being like, I don't want this to keep me awake at night, but like it sounds like you're moving in the right direction, and you can only do what you can do. and just cross the bridges for everything else if and when you need to. Jennifer says, "As Satan?" LOL. She says, "I love SNL." Yes, JJ says, "Oh, who would make you say that? Satan?" Yes, everybody. Okay, I'm so glad you guys are familiar with that skit and with the old Saturday Night Live. Oh, that show. It's such a great show. I'm so glad, what's his name? Lauren Michaels followed his dream and put that show together. It's just great. Jennifer was saying the go with the flow. She says, "But I'm even a go with the flow type of person with people I trust too." Oh, girl, I hear you. I was the same way. And it took me decades to realize that that was a problem. Even this is what like trips me out. And this is what I think about a lot. Like when I write on this topic and when I do, well, I haven't, when I do create videos and stuff like this is I think about the old me and like what I would have looked for and like what I needed to read and what I would have even been searching for. Because I remember picking up a book. I picked up Codependent No More years, like 20 years ago. And it was not relevant to me at all. Like I got nothing out of that book. And that is supposed to be like the book on codependency. Totally did not resonate with me. I don't know if that was me or if it was the book or some combination of both. I don't know. This is why it's so weird, like with books, like we were talking about earlier about making your own opinion and like books you read will resonate with you different ways at different points in your life. Even the Pia Melody stuff. I think had I read this 5 years ago, I'm not sure if it would have resonated with me. Some of the stuff in the Facing Codependency book, I think might have, but it's weird. It's scary. It's scary and it's weird. And it trips me out when I think about like so many of my realizations. It was just because a certain phrase was worded in a certain way. Like I might have heard a variation of that. Here's an example. I might have heard a variation of that phrase and it just didn't hit. Like it didn't resonate for years. And then it was just a little, 2 steps to the right and it totally resonated. So an example of that would be people would refer to codependent people as, oh, well, they need to be needed. And I never thought of myself as needing to be needed. Never. Like I don't feel like I get any like ego satisfaction out of, like I've known people that have needed to be needed. I had never felt like I was that way, even though I've always been like pretty much a caregiver my whole life, but I didn't like need to be needed. But then when it was worded in a way of they're more comfortable when they're needed, I'm like, bingo, that's me. That's me. That's the role that I know. And and then it was a game changer. But that's scary because then you think, oh my God, like what else is there out there that I need to know? That I'm just like 3 or 4 words away that are just it's like slightly out of focus. That if it was in focus, it would be a game changer. Like that's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. Yeah. Same thing, like I guess with the realization I was talking about earlier with like perfectionism. I'm sure this has been brought up to me before. And odds are I had probably fought it tooth and nail, being like, no, that is like not an issue with me. Like I don't, because I think about people in my life that are, I would say, are perfectionists. Like I never had that, but mine, again, like it was just two steps to the other direction of, oh, it's this more of like fear of making a mistake. It wasn't anxiety about not being perfect. It was fear of choosing the wrong thing and making a mistake. And then basically having to deal with conflict that comes from that mistake. And, or the cleanup involved from making a mistake. So then I would just start doing the bare minimum, because I had to keep going forward. So I don't know. It's weird. Like, it's just weird. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. New Me says, Dana, I think we learn when it's our time to learn. Totally. Yeah. Bonnie says, sometimes I feel like we're sleepwalking through life until we wake up. It's like the great awakening. Yeah, it is. It's like the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I guess it's like that. I guess it's like that with everything, right? Like you have this certain understanding or you experience enough pain and we're seeking out answers. And this stuff just would not have resonated any other way. But yeah, like I said, it freaks me out. I want to be able to reach those people that are searching. Like people were talking about earlier, like mentioning like, why is this toxic relationship so hard to get over? Or like they're searching like peripheral kind of terms, trying to make sense out of things. I didn't even think to search. So you guys are way ahead of me. I just really thought what I went through was a unique experience and it didn't even cross my mind to start searching for this stuff. And I don't even know how I fell into a support group for all of this. Like, that's weird, beyond weird. Curious, probably curiosity. Because I know at that time I had no idea what they were talking about. I did not identify with any of this. So weird. Life is so strange sometimes. Okay, let's see here. Missouri Cowboy says, I need to read Codependency No More again. It did not resonate with me when I read it years ago. I think it almost 20 years ago. Is it that old? I think it is that old because I remember reading that book. I swear I read it in my 20s and I'm in my early 40s. So, and here's the thing. I've read that book, I want to say 2 or 3 times over the past, I swear it's been 20 years, over the past 20 years. And every single time I'm like, yeah, it does not, nothing. Like I'm not getting anything out of this. And I don't know why, which makes me, because I apparently have this sick curiosity to know what else, what is everybody getting out of this book? Because I'm getting nothing. Maybe I need to go read it again. I don't know. I know that I heard the book is primarily having to do with like sobriety and addiction, and that has not been, drugs and alcohol have not been a huge, thankfully not a huge challenge I've had to overcome in my life. So maybe that was why it just didn't resonate with me. I don't know. We'll have to read it again because why not? And see. Let's see. New Life says, my mother uses Christianity as a cover. I only realized recently that she has never said anything that suggests she has a real relationship with God. My dad did, and we just assumed she did. Yeah, it's interesting how that happens. My grandfather was a minister, and he was a narcissist. And it was so weird. I've only met very few people that have ever been like him. Like, he really didn't have personality. All he did was quote scripture. It was really unsettling. And I think that it was weird. Like, he did believe in God. I fully believe that he believed in God. But because he had such an unhealthy ego, like, it was like he just used his faith to feed his self-righteousness. Like, there was no humility involved. There was no accountability. There was no like submission to morality, or like to other people, to working well with other people. Like, he was missing some like really core points, but he would have never been capable of them because he just didn't have a healthy enough ego for that. Um, and yeah, that's weird when you kind of realize, like, this person's like, they might be going to church, they might be leading the church, they might be reading the Bible and citing scripture, but like, they're missing like really fundamental parts about this. Like, it's just their life. Like, my mom, I would consider her, she walks the walk and she talks the talk and she has faith, and her life is a testament to her faith. Like, and she's mellowed out. She's mellowed out. I think she might find the church lady stuff. I have to ask her if she'd ever find that funny, because that was pretty funny. But she is a solid, consistent, good person, no matter who is in the room, no matter who is looking, no matter who knows about it. Like, and to me, that's what it's about. Like, it's not about what you look like on Sunday. So. I agree. Jeffrey says, I hate those false piety types. They are not at all spiritual. They are an absolute disgrace. Yes. Yes, I agree. And Mo says, religion is a weapon that narcissists use. Some of them look like they're being very religious, but they are just cannibals. I agree. There's there's a saying that the best hiding place for evil is behind good. And I think that is so true, because it's just not on people's radars. I think it's how you look at all of like the molestation in the Catholic Church and how was that able to continue? I mean, thousands of priests, that's wild. Tens of thousands, maybe even more children hurt by this. And, I think it's just, most people were like, oh, this couldn't have possibly happened. They're men of God. You're just saying this because you don't want to go to church, or you don't want to be an altar boy, or you want to sleep in, or you want to play with your friends. Like, it's just disgusting. There's no, God is not in the building when a person misuses their faith like that. Like, I don't even know, like, how do you even look in the mirror? I don't get it. It's like they're a million miles away from God when they do stuff like that. Okay. Let's see. Bonnie says, so how do you forgive a narcopath? I think that leaves you more vulnerable to abuse again. Well, I think, and Kevin had said, it's surrounding yourself with good people helps, which is true. Not being around people who aren't in line with your healing or journey. Moving forward, making some progress. I agree with all of that 100%. And the forgiveness part too. Forgiveness does not mean that you're okay with what happened to you. It does not mean that you forget what happens to you. It means that you understand that this is a deeply damaged and disturbed person, and that their actions had nothing to do with you. Even though they were all directed at you, it wasn't because of you. Their actions were because of them. And so understanding, you just see it. It's like, again, that rabid puppy analogy. Like, this puppy is deeply damaged and is rabid and is just going to cause hurt and heartache everywhere it goes. Like, it's just that's how that dog is. It just is. And so I just have to stay away from it. Like, I can have compassion for it and understanding, but I need to always remember, like, that dog is rabid, that I can't pet it, I can't snuggle with it, I can't get near it. Like, I need to keep at an arm's length. So it's the same thing, I think, with dangerous and destructive people in our life, is just understanding, like, there's just deeply damaged people for whatever reason. And some of their behavior, it's whether it's intentional or unintentional, it doesn't even matter. A combination of both. Like, they're abusive. And I think our forgiveness is better spent on ourselves, for like forgiving ourselves for staying, forgiving ourselves for not seeing what it was much sooner. I think that's the forgiveness that I would spend time on. And as far as he's concerned, you can work. Here's the thing, when people ask that question about forgiveness, that they're afraid to forgive because they're afraid to be vulnerable towards abuse, what I think maybe part of that question is also asking is, I'm scared to let go of the anger that I feel, because I feel like that anger is the only thing that's keeping me safe. Because if I can only set boundaries with this person when I'm angry at them. If I'm not angry at them, then I tend to slip into the go with the flow mode or people pleasing mode. And I become very passive. And I'm like, okay, I guess you can come over. Okay, I guess I can give you a hug and I can loan you money. And I guess, and then they just slide back into their old routine. If that's the case, then it's not that anger it's technically, that anger might be one way that it's protecting you, but boundaries can also protect you. So it's a different way of understanding kind of what's in your toolkit to keep you safe. Does that make sense? Because the old us only had anger to keep ourselves safe, because we would hang on until we could no longer hang on anymore. We'd get angry, we would leave. That anger would prevent us from going back. The new us is like, oh, I have other tools in my toolkit besides using anger to keep myself safe, or use hoping and coping to try to tolerate a situation. Like, the new me can use boundaries, can be assertive, can have deal breakers, can raise my standards, can navigate the world in a very different way than the old me. So thank you, Missouri Cowboy, for the live stream donation. He says, this is the best therapy I've ever experienced. Dana, thank you. And thank all of you in the chat for being here. I need you. Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that, and for being here, and for just being such an active participant. It's awesome seeing the way that you guys support each other and answer questions and open up these conversations, and just all of it is just really cool. So something that just makes my heart smile across the board. Yeah, Bonnie says, yes, I'm afraid of trusting narcissists again. I don't want to backslide. Well, and if you can get to that place where you realize when you're being mistreated and that's not okay, and you're not trying to carry their shame or their guilt because they're not carrying it, if you can see some of these concepts, then you won't backslide. And this stuff kind of really does. It just comes with practice. It just comes with practice. And, but I think once you have some of these fundamentals down about loving yourself enough to where you're like, you know what, I value my safety and I value my sanity. And it's just the realization, it's not okay. It's not okay for a person to cuss at me or to threaten me or to call me nasty names or to be ugly like that, or belittling or demeaning or this kind of stuff. Like it might feel, when a person's been around a lot of abusive people, male or female, it can really feel like that's how everybody is. And so when they start having standards of saying like, I'm not going to tolerate that, it can feel like, well, then there's no one left, right? And the reality is there are lots of people out there that don't call names, don't cuss, don't hit, don't abuse, use, or exploit other people. There truly, truly are lots and lots and lots of people out there that don't do these things. So I think just realizing that is huge. Jennifer says, I'm definitely going to have to look up PMLity. Yes, I highly recommend that you do. She's got a handful of YouTube videos, old YouTube videos from like the 80s and early 90s, which are always kind of fun. She does a great job of really laying out clearly laying out boundaries and kind of, she's got this whole core symptoms of codependence and areas that we need to work on. And I really like her delivery and just how she thinks. Like it's just very organized and spelled out. So yeah, highly recommend searching for her on YouTube. So okay, so with that said, we are at the end of the live stream. So let's do our guided meditation and we will call it a night. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night, book club, PMLity, Facing Codependence, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you guys can make it. So for the time being, let's take some time and get comfortable. So find a comfy spot, whether you're sitting down or laying down. Oh gosh. Allowing yourself to just settle in to your space and into your body. Taking a series of 3 breaths in through your nose and exhaling out through your mouth. And with each breath in, allowing that oxygen to travel down to the very bases of your lungs. Feeling your lungs expand completely. Now bringing your attention to the top of your forehead. Relaxing and releasing any tension or stress that you might be storing there. Allowing your eyebrows and your eyes to relax. Allowing your cheeks and your jaw to relax. Letting your mouth hang open as you release your tongue from the roof of your mouth. And allowing your face to just relax. Relaxing your neck and your shoulders. Allowing any stress or tension to just easily and effortlessly melt away. And continuing to breathe. opening your chest as you relax your shoulders, your arms, your forearms, your hands and your fingers, allowing your arms and your hands to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable. And continuing to breathe. Relaxing your hips and your thighs and your calves, your feet and your toes, allowing your legs and your feet to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Feeling the heaviness of your body as you allow yourself to completely relax. If you notice that you're still carrying some tension or stress, perhaps visualize it as rocks in a backpack. So perhaps kind of make a mental note as to how heavy this backpack is that you've been carrying. And let's go ahead and take that backpack off. You can place it in a place where you can still see it. It's still there. Taking it off doesn't mean that you're not acknowledging any stress or tension in your life. It doesn't mean anything other than we're just going to be in the moment. We're just going to allow ourselves to feel light and to move into as much healing and happiness as possible. So let's take a moment and visualize a light in the center of your chest. And perhaps that light is like a flicker of a candle. Perhaps it's smaller, perhaps it's a little bit larger. And for the next 7 breaths, see if you can make this light as big as possible. With each inhale, watching that light grow easily and effortlessly bigger and brighter, connecting you to everything that is good and right in the world. And with each exhale, exhaling any tension or anxiety you might have, letting go of all of the heaviness and the darkness. Feeling that light grow larger and larger. If you're having a particularly difficult time with this, perhaps you're going through a lot of emotional pain. It might feel as though that you're walled off, that you have like a brick in your chest. And it might feel that you're not able to connect to that light. And if this is the case, let's visualize some cracks in that brick and that light shining through. Because that light, that inner you, that's always there and that's always connected to everything that's good and right in the world. And so even if you're making this light bigger and stronger, with or without the bricks, shining this light as much as you possibly can, it might feel safe or comfortable to visualize connecting this light to other people, perhaps in the chat or perhaps in your real life, your day-to-day life, I should say. Connecting to other people that are good and just radiate that positive, nourishing energy, and you radiating back, connecting to everything good and right. Realizing that there is so much that is right about you. Watching this light grow bigger and stronger. This amazing restorative healing energy that it connects you to. Feeling this light travel down into your stomach and your legs, out through your toes, down into each of your arms, into your hands, out your fingers, till you almost feel like you're not in your body, that you're so connected with that light that you have become that light. There is joy here, there is peace, there is contentment, there is creativity, there is exploration, there is fun. So many positive things in this light. Now let's take a moment to just connect with some other people, sending that light to other people, perhaps in the chat, perhaps in your day-to-day life. Perhaps just reconnecting with God, however you might define God, or the universe, or some sort of goodness out there. When you're ready, come on back. Let me give yourself a big energetic hug, just acknowledging that you've come so far. You really have. You are doing such a good job, and there is so much that is right with you. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So, yes, thank you, Kevin. And I will see you guys. We've book club tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we hope to see you there. Thank you, Bonnie. I'm glad that you enjoyed this. And I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. So take care as always. Lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You're not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.